So without further ado, let's jump in. Here are some things that I hope you get out of our time today. My primary goal is that I hope you are able to walk away from the time this afternoon and implement some small practical changes to help you experience more success, more passion, and more purpose. So in preparing for this presentation, I was thinking about my own childhood, thinking about some of the things that came naturally to me even as a toddler. And you can see those bottom two images, the one with the baby doll in my hands and the other one, I have a cat on my lap. And so a lot of images I found of myself as a child, I was carrying a baby doll or had an animal nearby. There was something about me in childhood that still exists today where I was always nurturing, trying to take care of the people or the animals around me. And that existed from the time that I was a child. Fast forward a little bit to middle school, you see that lovely black and white photo there. It's a headshot from our talented theater class, but someone had written on the top of the page, my life without her is like a pencil, a broken pencil, pointless. Those middle school years are just a little bit angsty, but it was an exhibit of, again, those nurturing qualities that I had, those deep loyalty ties, commitment to friendship, and an authentic connection with the people around me. Going ahead even further, you see on the left-hand side a picture of me with my dear friend Larissa. Larissa and I have been friends since we were very, very little. Larissa has Down syndrome, and she's just always been part of my life. And so much so that you see that letter there in the top middle of our page. And I had written back in 2009, I guess it was an assignment for school, I had written a letter to my future self, and I dug this up a few weeks ago. And in it, I outlined 3 goals. One goal was to become a horse therapist because my friends like Larissa really loved their horse therapy time and really looked forward to those sessions. And so I wanted to be a horse therapist to bring joy and excitement to my friends like Larissa. The second thing was that I wanted to make good grades because I knew that if I made good grades, then it meant that I could have any job I wanted, like being a horse therapist, of course. And the third goal I had written was that I wanted to impact someone's life in a positive way. So as you can see, from early childhood all the way through even high school and beyond, there have been parts of me that are committed to caring for the people around me. And you can see even today, that top right picture and the one just beneath it, that's a picture of me with my 2 daughters on our recent trip to Montana. I love, love, love getting to spend time with them. I love the work that I get to do. It allows me to spend time with them, and I don't miss these pivotal years. So that's a huge part of who I am and where I've been. So fast forward just a little bit here. Another commonality I saw in my pictures from childhood is that I always had this silliness, this goofiness, this playfulness that existed from the very beginning. So a lot of pictures of me dancing and laughing and smiling and making jokes even with my friends. Looking over there to the left-hand side, you can see our 3rd grade talent show performance was to Greased Lightning. We were the Pink Ladies, and we had our Danny Zuko there as well. We were in the newspaper for it. It was a big deal. And then fast forward even further, in high school, I actually got to perform as Sandy in our High School Musical. Felt like that childhood dream coming true. So there's been this playfulness, this positivity, this lightheartedness that complemented my deep friendships that I've seen ever since I was a child. Going ahead a little bit more, that passion, that playfulness, that playfulness turned into passion as I got older. So you can see this picture on the top right here. When I don't even think I was in kindergarten, I decided to climb to the top of the tower at this my gymnastics class. And of course I fell, broke both of the bones in my arm, but I was super determined, super convinced that I could do it and that no one was going to be able to tell me otherwise, despite the injury. You can see this image down here. Maybe mom was telling me that it was time to come in and take a break from swimming at the beach, but I was determined, absolutely not. I wanted to keep playing. You can see in this top image, the banner image up at the top, that when I was just 7 years old, maybe 9 years old, my brother was playing on the high school football team, and I went to every game and stood in the front row of the bleachers and did the cheers with the cheerleaders and just found so much joy and passion in that environment. that one day they invited me to actually perform on the football field with them. And so being far too young, my parents said, okay, we'll let her do it, but she's going to tuck her out by halftime. Nope, I was determined. I stayed through the whole game. My parents said I passed out in the car as soon as I got in the car, I was dead asleep, but loved every minute of the energy, the excitement, and I was determined to let those cheerleaders bring me as part of their team. Moving ahead, even into college, I found myself running a monogramming business from my dorm room. Again, just so determined to contribute, to add value, to learn things, put my hands in the dirt, and just get messy. So even in college, balancing school and friends and social life, running a monogram business from my dorm room was a priority for me as well. Shortly after college, got married, have been married for almost 5 years now, and we moved to North Carolina when I was 30 weeks pregnant from Louisiana. So lots of things I've accomplished. Again, that passion, that playfulness that started in childhood has persisted even today. It has come out as this kind of determination and strong-willed nature. So that's a little bit about me personally. I want to give you a little bit of a professional introduction as well. I formerly was a teacher, moved a little bit and did some sales, and landed a human resources position a few years ago, where in that role, I was introduced to a mentor named Rex Miller. And Rex Miller is responsible for creating all of this with the Genius Spark. And what he did with me during that time was he helped me develop a picture of what I look like at my best. And so part of developing that picture, I realized that I have a lot of skills that could allow me to help people. And that's where I've launched today into my own coaching and consulting agencies. I help local businesses in my area, but also nationwide. That's just a couple of ways you can get in touch with me, but that's what brings me to our conversation for today. I believe a lot of what I do is fueled by this one quote, this idea that what one can be, one must be. This universal longing and desire for us to become the best version of ourselves. We aspire to contribute, we aspire to develop, we aspire to become the best version of ourselves. And so Maslow said this beautifully, what one can be, one must be. And so that is a foundational piece to a lot of what we're going to talk about today. Another component about what we're going to engage with today comes from a study that NASA conducted as part of the Apollo program. They were assessing their engineers and they were trying to find the best and the brightest for the program. So they developed an assessment where they would give an object like this tape and they would count the novelty of responses when they asked questions like, what uses can you think of for this object? So maybe someone says, oh, it could be an eyeglass. Oh, it can be sticky, so it can put things together. It has a sharp edge, so maybe it can cut things as well. So they were assessing the novelty and the frequency of responses for questions like that. And they scored the engineers along what they called an imaginative index. Well, one of the researchers, his name was George Land, he quickly realized that it was a non-written test. And so he said, I want to go and give this to children to see what we learn in the child population versus the adult population. So these are the results from what George Land found. When he assessed kids ages 3 to 5, he found 98% of them tested at that genius level. So 98% of the students they assessed were scoring at the highest caliber of uniqueness on this imaginative index. And as you see, as the population got older into their 30s, only 2% were testing at that same genius caliber. So all of this illustrates an idea that we were all once a genius, but we've lost it. There is something about us in that 3 to 5 year old range that we had access to, that we were confident in, that we exercised daily, and we've unlearned it or suppressed it or forgotten it along the way. So Walt Disney says this as well. He says, the more that you're like yourself, the less you are like anyone else, which makes you unique. And Mike Vance, who was a prodigy under Disney, said the problem with most people is that they spend their lives trying to emulate others. So we have lots of copies, but few originals. And he also says nobody wants to go to kind of like Disney. And this is true, right? So often, especially with the rise of social media and other platforms, we see these aspirational goals of who we think we need to become. We have business leaders that we admire. We have religious leaders that we admire, and we say, I want to be like that person, right? But the problem with that approach is exactly what he says here. Then you just become kind of like that hero. And so we don't want to become kind of like someone else. Then it's just a diluted version of what they do really well. Instead, we need to figure out what our uniqueness is, the things that we bring to the table, celebrate those, refine those, and show up at our best each day. And then we become the best version of ourselves. So usually when I do this in a live format, I actually ask for people to share. But since we are on LinkedIn and YouTube and Facebook, I don't even know all the platforms that we're on. But since we're doing this through a recording today, I won't ask you to share. But I want you to think about, what were those things that you loved doing as a child? For me, that was playing with baby dolls. That was spending time with friends. That was all of the things that I outlined for you previously. But what were those things for you? What were the things that you really enjoyed doing around 3 to 5 that, looking back, you can see might have been a bit unique? One time I had someone tell me that she loved to go to these competitions and they would invent things. And one of the products that they were given was bubble wrap. And they were asked to create things with bubble wrap. And she's just absolutely loved being inventive and creative and using something for a new purpose. So that's something unique, something she really loved to do. Another thing to think about is, what did others praise you for? So things that even in childhood were natural for you, but other people saw and said, wow, Maddie, the way that you spend time with your friend Larissa, that's so incredible. Keep doing that thing. Or I actually remember one time we were at Vacation Bible School at my church, and a friend of mine was having a hard time and didn't want to listen. And so they called me in and I sat under the table with her and quickly got her back engaged with the group, right? So what did other people notice about you as a child and praise you for? And the last thing to think about is, what came easy for you? What were things that you never thought twice about, that you could have spent all day doing, that just were, again, effortless and easy and natural for you as a child? The next thing to think about is, once you have a picture of those things, when did you start to play it safe? When did you stop doing the things that you loved? When did you stop thinking creatively and exploring your talents and start playing it a little bit more safe? For me, I told you a lot of my experience, my story, my personality is playful and lighthearted. I did theater, and in 7th grade, for some reason, I decided to take a step back from theater. I did reengage, don't worry, that's how I got the part of Sandy later. But there was this period around 7th grade where I thought I needed to take a break. It's not cool, I don't want to do theater anymore. So when did you begin to play it safe? Those things you loved, the things that you never thought twice about doing, when did you stop doing them and begin playing it safe? Another example is sports. I played softball as a child, and as I got into kind of school age, I started to look around and think, maybe it might not be cool for me to be an athlete or for me to play softball. And so I stopped altogether and I never picked it back up again. So think about those moments when you started to play it safe and you didn't engage with those things you naturally enjoyed as much as you did prior. So Sir Ken Robinson on the left has one of the most famous TED Talks, most watched TED Talks of all time, called Do Schools Kill Creativity? Now, I am a former teacher, so I'm not here to talk about or to hate on schools, but his research does suggest that assembly line thinking, often introduced in a school setting, sit up straight, stand in line, stay quiet, raise your hand, some of those procedures we are moving away from, but some of those procedures actually stifle that innate genius, that creativity that we have. So there's many, 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 many reasons why you might start playing it safe, whether that's socialization, education, as Sir Ken Robinson suggests, perception, experience, responsibility, so many things that can cause us to play it safe. But think about some of those factors and think about the timing of why you stopped engaging in those things that were so natural for you. So I am here to tell you today, to borrow a quote, I should say, from my mentor, Rex Miller. You were born with a genius spark that still exists in you, even if it may be hidden. So I believe, and this is essential to all of the work that I do, I believe that there is a genius spark in each of us, and we just have to spend time uncovering that spark and reigniting it again. So hang with me for a little longer, and I'll talk about how you can do that. My next little phase here, I'm going to break all of the rules, I'm sure, on public speaking and presentations, but it's important. I'm going to show you a video clip from America's Got Talent. I'm going to show you the whole thing. It's about 7 minutes, but I think it's important to show and illustrate this idea of our uniqueness and what it can do for us when we uncover that hidden talent. So hang tight and I will be right back.
Welcome back to America's Got Talent. It's coming to the end of a long day here in New York. And as the auditions draw to a close, there's just one act left to see the judges. Meet 36-year-old car washer, Landau.
What up, man?
What's good, Nick?
How you?
I'm good.
What's your name?
My name is Landau Murphy Jr.
I'm Landau Eugene Murphy Jr. I'm from Logan, West Virginia. I'm 36 years old. I've been washing cars for about 10 years, but my real dream is to come sing for the world, and I'm here to show America that I have talent. Never auditioned for nothing.
Nothing at all.
Just been washing cars. I've washed thousands and thousands of cars. I've scrubbed so many BF Goodrich tires, I don't want to see another piece of rubber again. I've been up to here in bubbles, and now it's just time to go somewhere else.
Let me see you put it down.
Why are you laughing at Howie?
I love Howie. I love you, dude.
Oh, well, thank you. That's very
Since
nice.
little Bobby.
My name is Bobby.
That's pretty good.
I remember that.
All right, then. What's your name?
My name is Landau Eugene Murphy Jr.
Landau, are you chewing gum?
Yes, I am.
I wouldn't do that when you're
Want me to
performing
take it
in this show, seriously.
Thank you. That's better. Where are you from, Landau?
I'm from Logan, West Virginia.
Okay.
Yes.
And what are you going to do for us today?
Well, I do all kind of music, but tonight I'm just trying to follow my dream.
And what do you do for a living?
I was recently washing cars out my new car detailer.
All right. Well, good luck.
Thank you. I would sacrifice anything, come what might, for the sake of having you near, in spite of the warning voice that comes in the night and repeats how it yells in my ear. Don't you know, you little fool, you never can win. Why not use your mentality? Get up, wake up to reality. And each time I do, just the thought of you makes me stop just before I begin. Because I've got you under my skin. And I like you under my skin.
That's talent. He belongs in Vegas.
Was there a tape playing? Were you miming?
No, I was not. That's my real voice.
And you talk about bringing things back. What better way to bring it back than with your look and who you are?
Yes.
So, Landau, you come out on this stage chewing your gum, doing your silly Bobby impressions and your Howie Mandel hero worship. And I'm thinking this is going to be total train wreck, if I'm honest. I thought, honestly, I really did. I just thought, this guy's not serious.
Right.
And then you began to sing, and I couldn't believe quite what I was hearing. I really couldn't. And what I like about you is I don't think you really know how good a singer you are. Have you ever auditioned for anything before?
Never in my life.
This is your first ever audition for
First
anything?
ever audition in front of anybody.
First audition, and he blazed it.
You are a very unusual talent. You're the kind of reason that we like doing the show, because you come out of nowhere, you've never auditioned before in your life, and you have a natural, God-given talent.
Your life is never going to be the same. I'm telling you, you just changed your whole life.
We're gonna vote. Okay, Piers.
Landau, I can see you're emotional. You're probably emotional because, as I say, you didn't know how good you were. And now you do. So I'm going to say yes.
Come on. You know what it is. Yes.
See you in Vegas.
Thank you, New York. Start spreading the news. I'm leaving today. I want to be a part of it. New York, New York.
That was great.
Amazing.
I just never knew it, man. I never knew that they would love me like this.
That was one of the most surprising moments we've ever had.
I love it.
Make sure I'm unmuted here. I think you can hear me now. I mean, so many things to unpack from that video, right? And normally, again, if I'm in a live format, we spend time actually dissecting the things we saw and the things that we heard. But there's a few things that I would like to point out about that video. One, the judge's reaction. Well, the first thing is him coming out onto the stage is so casual. He doesn't think that his whole life is about to change in a matter of 5 minutes, right? He comes out chewing his gum, acting casual, making jokes with the judges, right? And doesn't realize the weight of what is about to happen. And then he goes through, he wows them, of course, and gets a standing ovation, I believe. And the judges say things like, your life is never going to look the same. They say, you didn't know how good you are. And Landau Eugene Murphy Jr. is 34 years old. Why did it take 34 years for him to realize his passion and his unique ability to sing and perform and bring joy to an audience through his music? It's because nobody called out the beauty that they saw in him. So something I want to also highlight is what he says at the very end, and it's so easy to miss it. He says, I never knew they could love me like that. He was spending his days detailing cars, working hard. And he got on stage. He took we call it a red pill, blue pill moment. He took advantage of the opportunity and his life changed forever. Yes, he did go on to win and had a great singing career. But he says, I never knew they could love me like that. How many of us are sitting in that position, right? Where we're sitting on this genius, this hidden talent, and we never knew that we could be loved like that. We never knew we could be helping the people around us with such an impact, right? Sometimes it's just a matter of stepping out in faith. So something that's important to mention as we talk about this idea of having a hidden genius, that we had this genius, but we've lost it, is that genius is not just talking about those great minds that you think of when you hear the word genius. Genius is actually referring to that thing that comes naturally to you, but looks like magic to me. We also call it your magic trick. But again, remember that the genius refers to those things that come naturally to you, but they look like magic to me. It's your magic trick. So I'm going to ask you, what is your magic trick? And many of you are probably unsure how to answer that question. Before I was introduced to Rex Miller and introduced to a lot of this stuff, I didn't know what my magic trick was. I didn't know the uniqueness that I brought to the table or brought to a team. So many of us can't answer this just from our thoughts alone. So I utilized an assessment called the Strength Finder Assessment that was created by Donald Clifton, who's the father of strength psychology. He actually looked around the world of psychology and he noticed that we focus so much on what is wrong with people, with circumstances, with society. And instead, he decided he wanted to shift the focus in psychology to focus on what is strong, the things that are natural and intuitive. So he created this assessment, and part of the assessment is measuring the way that your brain is wired. It's measuring the neurons that fire the fastest and the strongest in your brain. And so it gives you this glimpse inside of your mind on the way that you're wired, things that you're naturally inclined to do best, enjoy most. It's measuring intrinsic reward for how you can show up at your best. And so this is a list of my top 5 strengths. When you take the assessment, you could get the same list of your top 5. And we call this the discovery phase. When I got my results back, I thought, wow, I never knew that positivity was a gift. I never knew that positivity was anything more than just part of my personality. I never knew that it was something I needed to tap into and bless other people with, right? So this is a great first step, having some assessment or some measure of what you look like at your best, but it's not the whole picture. Hang with me for a second and we'll come back. I want to use this illustration. Down the middle, what you see is a river, and it's rushing and it's strong. This is representative of those top 5 strengths. It's representative of the way that you're wired to naturally show up at your best, the things that you naturally do and enjoy the most. The sort of second phase of this image is there's some tributaries you notice. And those are like strengths 6 through 10 if you have the Strength Finder report. They're those things that you still do naturally and you just don't tap into them nearly as frequently. And then, of course, tributaries turn to rivers and streams and even to dry beds. And so the dry beds are representative of your bottom strengths if you're thinking of the Clifton Strengths top 34. They're the things that are not as natural or not, they're not part of your day-to-day operation or the way that your brain is wired at its best. And so you can pour water into those dry beds and get a little bit of squeeze out of them, right? But it takes a lot of effort. So it still exists within you, but it's not going to be the place that you want to spend your most time, your most effort, or your most attention. The other thing to think about is these kind of light bulbs that you see all across the images. These are representative of the hormones that are actually firing in your brain. So part of what that assessment is measuring are things like dopamine. Dopamine is that fun, pleasure, do it again hormone. It's also measuring the endorphins. Those endorphins are responsible for getting us into that flow state. The next thing they're measuring is the serotonin. Serotonin is that relational rhythm, psychological safety, and trust. And oxytocin, which is the deepest levels of intimacy. So there's hormones. This is a neurochemical process that's happening in your brain, and different circumstances will cause different hormones to release in your body. So these are the things that Gallup is measuring, and it's measuring, again, the reward of your body from firing off those hormones. Of course, we all know if you're not playing to your strengths, then you're in a stressful state. Well, that's actually a result of a different hormone called cortisol. So not only playing to your strengths feels good because you're getting those feel-good hormones, but not playing to your strengths actually promotes stress because of that cortisol. So there's lots of things happening in your body as you think about the things that you're naturally wired to do. So after you take any assessment, you're given this, oh, Dave, sounds great. Thanks for coming. After you take any assessment, you're given a sort of packet that says, here's what you look like at your best if you're taking the Strengths Finder. Now what, right? So that is nothing more than knowledge. If you take that assessment, that's great. You're on that first step to transformation, but it's just discovery. It's just knowledge. So we need more than just knowledge in order for this to actually become powerful, inspirational stuff. So your genius remains invisible until you give it language. And the way that we want to give it language is not language from someone else, not language that comes straight from an assessment, but you need to develop your own language and your own way of understanding what you look like at your best. The assessment or the stories from your childhood are just step one. I'm going to break another rule of Presenting 101, and I'm going to read you this whole quote from Rex as well, because it so beautifully captures the process of transformation. Again, this is not something that you can take an assessment and suddenly everything's fixed and you come to your best self the next morning. It's a process, it's a journey, and it's a series of small decisions to continue to show up at your best. So Rex says, this process is part ecological conservation and part archaeology. We're going to dredge waterways that are full of silt, clearing away the debris of self-doubt and general uncertainty. We will shore up the banks and reinforce the levees so we can clearly see what we look and feel like when we are thriving. We will identify moments that changed our course and moments that solidified it. Once we're able to accurately and confidently describe what we look like at our best, we will be able to consistently move toward that state in our daily lives. So that's the process of transformation. I grew up in Louisiana, I think about the Mississippi River, right? And I remember in school learning that the Mississippi River actually changes its path, right? And of course the teacher said that and we all didn't believe her. And then she said, no, it takes millions of years for something as strong and as powerful as the Mississippi River to change course. But it's possible, it happens. And so this is what transformation is like. It takes series of small decisions in order to experience a drastic transformation, but it is all possible. So this is important to mention here, that our brain is a goal-seeking organ. Our brain is the most calorie-consuming organ, and it's constantly filtering things from two lenses. It wants to conserve all the energy to what's going to keep me safe and what do I want or desire. And so our brain, outside of those two things, are on this default mode because it's trying to conserve energy. And so what we're trying to do is use this picture of what you look like at your best to give your brain coordinates to say, here's how I can show up at my best, and train that default mode to where you would naturally operate out of the things you're gifted and wired to do. This is really fitting to talk about this now because of the Olympics, but professional athletes have figured this out. They've figured out the science of visualization and this mental rehearsal of their peak performance. So if it's swimming, if it's gymnastics, they will actually spend time engaging all of their senses to imagine and visualize that peak performance. So I think of Simone Biles. I'm always fascinated by the gymnastics, watching her hit those moves on the beam or the floor. She's practiced it physically millions of times, of course, but she's also rehearsed it in her mind, I suspect, because this is common amongst all professional athletes. Michael Phelps utilizes this in swimming as well. He has a process of rehearsing and visualizing his best strokes. We think of musicians when they perform scales over and over and over again. We call this muscle memory, but it's more than just muscle memory. It's actually mental rehearsal and memory. The science shows that a visualization or a mental rehearsal process can actually give you 90% of the results of actually doing it. So imagine if you didn't actually have to get in a pool and you could just visualize and get 90% of the benefit of actually jumping in and swimming that lap. Well, that's what professional athletes are doing. And so we want to use that to help us show up at our best every day. This is my picture of what I look like at my best. This, just like an athlete, this is my performance criteria. And so I started, again, as you see on the left-hand side there, I started with a list of my 5 strengths. And then I went through a process called building our genius paragraph to fill in the gaps, to create language and to build a narrative and a picture of how I actually show up at my best. So no longer is it just a narrative about anybody who has positivity. This is how Maddie shows up with her positivity. This is how Maddie shows up with her communication strength, and so on and so forth. So building your genius paragraph becomes your performance guidance, performance criteria, and it becomes the guidance system, the coordinates that you plug into your brain each day to help you show up at your best. Another way to give your brain those coordinates is to have an alter ego. So you see this book here references the alter ego effect. And so they don't have to be these, heroic characters. I mean, it's more about how it's connected for you. My alter ego is Mary Poppins. Playfully, someone gave that to me because they said just a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down, right? But it gives my brain, it gives my mind coordinates of how my positivity can show up at its best. So once we have that picture, once we're really clear on the way that we show up at our best, here's the daily practice for how to harness and experience the transformation. I start in the morning by reinforcing my genius paragraph. I use that paragraph that I created in my own words to actually to simply read and give my brain the coordinates once in the morning. The next phase is to rehearse and visualize my day. So after I've read my paragraph, I go to my calendar and I say, oh, I have a LinkedIn Live later this afternoon. How am I going to show up in the LinkedIn Live at my best using my strengths? The next thing to do is gauge the reaction from people around you. Of course, this is difficult during a virtual event, right? But if you're working in a workplace, if you're on a meeting with someone, watch their facial expressions, listen to what they're saying, and gauge that feedback of how you're showing up at your best or how you might be getting in your own way. And then the last phase of this is reflect. At the end of the day, I reread my paragraph and we call it closing the loop. It's closing the loop for your brain saying, okay, I gave you these coordinates in the morning. Here are the coordinates again. Did I end up at point A just like I told myself I would? So the process of reflecting is quite simple. It's just a matter of rereading the paragraph and closing that loop for your mind to determine if you did or did not show up at your best. So as I mentioned before, getting those results back is just phase one. It's just the discovery, the aha moment. Wow, I didn't know positivity could be a strength, much less my number one strength. Then from there, you move to understanding your uniqueness. You start to see, oh, I do resonate with positivity a little bit more. What do the results really mean for me? The next phase is experiencing it in action. So going through your day and connecting the dots between, oh, that's that strength, and oh, that's how it showed up. So you start to experience and connect the dots between what your picture looks like of you at your best and how you actually show up. Of course, when we're experiencing the positive side of our strengths, there's also a reality that we're going to experience the negative side as well. So our shadow or our kryptonite can start to creep in as well, and we become aware of that as we move through this journey of transformation. Then we get that opportunity to perform under pressure. So I've mentioned this before, the red pill, blue pill moment. It's that opportunity where you say, I'm going to lean in and engage my strengths here, or I'm going to take the easy way out and I'm going to let somebody else do it. I'm going to, deflect, right? And so you have this moment when you're under pressure to either say, yes, I'm going to lean in and engage my strengths, or I'm just going to sit this one out and ride the wave. After that, you can evolve even more into mastery, where you start to see the bigger picture. Things become second nature. You start to trust your gut a little bit more because of you understand how you're wired and you understand those signals that your body is giving you. And the last thing is virtue. So seeing how these strengths not only benefit you in your day-to-day, but also how they connect to the world and impact the people around you. So this is a journey. This isn't something that happens overnight. Most of us probably never reach that virtue stage, right? But we're trying to move ever so slowly, one step up the ladder at a time. So I come back to this question from the very beginning. What is your magic trick? And again, I'm going to ask you to think about this a little bit differently this time. Instead of thinking about what is your magic trick, as you move forward throughout the rest of your day, start to notice the magic tricks of other people. Remember, our definition of genius is what's natural and intuitive to me, but looks like magic to others. So if something looks like magic to you, it's probably natural and intuitive to the person who's experiencing it. So I want to challenge you. Next time you see someone with, performing their magic trick or engaging their genius, tell them, whether that is someone checking you out at the grocery store who gives you that extra boost of positivity or that extra sense of joy, let them know, because it was so natural and intuitive for them. They may not even realize the effect that it has on you. Notify someone of that magic trick. And this is what I do with teams all the time. I'm going to talk about that later, but it's so important on a team when you're working together towards a common goal It is so important for each other to identify the magic tricks that they see in each other and establish language of how to provide feedback in that kind of meaningful way. Remember Landau from the very beginning, when he got that feedback, that's when his life changed forever. So I challenge you, next time you see someone performing in their magic, operating from their genius, give them a little insight and see what it does. Now, I know we have a host of people watching this LinkedIn or watching this recording. Some of you probably have taken the StrengthsFinder assessment. Some of you might have already had a genius paragraph. Maybe you've been through this process before. Some of you, this is all brand new. And so no matter where you come from, I want you to walk away with this. Identify some highlight moments from the last 24 to 48 hours. Maybe you can't think back, and find those childhood moments, but think about the last 24 to 48 hours. Where did people around you lean in to what you were doing? Where did they seem the most engaged with your output? Where did you feel the most engaged and energized in your work? Those are some indicators that you're experiencing your unique genius. So if you have an assessment, use those moments from the last 24 to 48 hours to enhance that picture of what you look like at your best. But if you don't have some measure of your unique genius, just start thinking about those highlight reel moments and start to identify some commonalities among them. And lastly, I love this quote: lasting change requires a process, not just better information. So hopefully you walk away from our time today with some practical tips of how to show up at your best. But taking this and letting it just sit in the back of your mind is not actually going to produce any transformation. So start engaging some of these practices. Reach out to me if you're stuck, because this is where life transformation occurs. I can see, I think, some comments that have come through. No questions so far. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me directly. LinkedIn or email is usually the best and fastest way. I want to give you a little bit of a picture of how I do this on a team. So typically, if you are a manager or business leader, I work with you to help you navigate this on your team by, one, initiating a self-discovery stage. So a lot of what I've talked about today is part of that self-discovery phase, helping everyone create a picture of what they look like at their best and socializing it across your team so that each other has the language to know, oh, that's how Joe shows up at his best. Oh, that's how I show up at my best. That's how Joe gets in his way. That's how I get in my way. So there's this self-discovery stage that's necessary for every team to experience the same transformation. The next phase is typically results in one-on-one sessions with each of your team. And during those, I take it just a little bit deeper. There's only so much self-discovery I can lead people through in a whole group setting. But when I get one-on-one, we can go just a bit further and start to connect those highlight reel moments or those childhood memories to their picture of what they look like at their best. During that one-on-one, I also spend time talking about the team and asking about how they've seen other people's genius and how they've experienced other people's kryptonite. And we start to get a sense for what is happening in the team dynamics that may not always have language. Things that you've probably identified in your business and said, oh, well, it's really frustrating that blah, blah, blah. The team exploration stage starts to uncover some of that as well. Phase 3 is the team diagnostic stage. So after we've done some self-discovery, after we've done some one-on-one and team discovery through those sessions, I actually give a quick 1 to 3 minute assessment to diagnose and pinpoint the specific areas we should focus on with your team. And that leads us to the strategic planning stage. In that strategic planning stage, we work together to create goals for how your team wants to become unblocked and how they can operate at their best. And then we have monthly check-ins for actually showing up and working towards those goals. So again, if you're interested in any of this work for an individual or for a team, please reach out to me on LinkedIn or through an email. This QR code on the right-hand side here will bring you to my virtual business card. It's got all of my contact information on there. So scan that with your phone's camera or your iPad's camera, and it should pull you up to that link as well. But I just want to say thank you so much for your time. I'm so grateful for everyone who has been here today, all of you that will watch this in the recording form as well. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I hope you have a great Friday afternoon.